Hey there, folks. What do we do with Joe Biden? And that's where we start in this episode of Amy and TJ Robes. I'm rethinking and a little embarrassed about how we went into watching the presidential debate between Trump and Biden tonight. We're, of course, recording this episode right after watching. But we went into it almost thinking there was going to be a lot of entertainment value. And I'm almost now after what we saw, I'm almost a little embarrassed that we went into it that way.
Yeah, well, we went into it looking at it as political sport. I don't think that's unfair. I think that's how we've looked at lots of debates. So we brought our daughters into it. We kind of had a watch party, so to speak, just bringing our kids into the political forum. But what ended up happening was something that you and I have never seen. I think most people who watched tonight's debate have never seen. And those of us who have covered debates, I felt like my jaw was dropped. You saw me multiple times. I actually covered my face and went into almost fetal position because you couldn't believe what you were hearing and watching.
Yeah, I think every message I got from anybody during the debate included the word cringe in it somewhere. But to your point, and I think you said we made this kind of a communal event. It was a watch party. We were going to have a watch party. Like, everybody come over. This is going to be crazy, right? Trump versus Biden. Finally, we're going to see these two on a stage together. And USA was playing Panama in the Copa America Cup ahead of time at 6 o'clock. So we actually had a really fun evening of television watching planned. And the tone really changed. And it had to be on the very first answer that President Biden gave. You became concerned, and it kind of went in line with a lot of the concerns people have had about him for a while. And now we all got to watch him live. This isn't about politics and policy and where you fall on whatever side of the aisle and trying to spin. Sometimes we all have to agree on just what we all witnessed.
So I was going to say something very similar. I watched my 21-year-old daughter put her hands over her eyes, and it wasn't about your political beliefs. It wasn't about what side of the aisle you're on. It was about watching someone struggle as a human being and actually feeling compassion. And I don't want to use the word pity, but there were a few moments where you actually felt that. What if that was my dad? What if that was my grandfather? And you kind of looked at Joe Biden in that way, or at least I did, versus, do I agree with him? Do I support what he's saying? It became less about who ideologically you supported, and it became more about, oh my God, what am I witnessing?
And hell, we almost wanted to give him a lifeline. We've all been in that play, and it's tough to talk about. I have no idea. I hadn't seen Joe Biden in years, right? So I don't know. I can't speak to him personally and what he's like behind the scenes, but we've all been somewhere with somebody who is, frankly, elderly in your family, and you're like, hey, come on, we're going this way. Hey, come on, over here. No. Remember they said that thing to you? Oh, right over here, Grandma. Where you have to guide them a little bit. They're there. They're still all there. But you got to just kind of guide them or show them the way just a little. He feels like you're, all right, come on, Joe, come on. Yeah, like you're almost rooting, trying to direct him as you're seeing it. And we've all been there. And I don't know what we're doing, what we're supposed to make of it when you're watching the president of the United States struggle in such a way.
I had so many confusing thoughts in my head. First of all, I will say this. I feel like former President Trump actually took the opportunity to not pounce on what we all saw. And I will give him credit for that on the debate stage, because I was actually impressed by his restraint. There was one point he pointed out. I don't know what he said, and I don't even think he knows what he said.
But he said,
but it was valid.
We were all thinking.
But it was valid. It was what we were all thinking.
In that moment, yeah.
And I have to say, my mind went to, like, we are obviously in a very tumultuous world. And I kept thinking, God, what are our enemies thinking? what are the people who wish us harm thinking as they watch this debate? It made me nervous. It did, in a way that I've never felt before. This was a debate I have never witnessed or could have imagined I would have seen in my lifetime. And it speaks to so many issues within our country, like why we have the system we have in place to incentivize or at least encourage people to run for office. I think we have a broken system. If these are our choices, and I'm not even talking about politics, I'm just talking about the people willing to put themselves on the line, people who maybe have been career politicians or someone who's obviously fairly recently jumped into the foray but has a business resume. But I just like, so many people have said this, but tonight it was on full display. It's just discouraging, disappointing, and frankly, for me and even for the younger generations we were watching with, frightening. That's where I was left after tonight.
There will be some who will discuss incumbents losing the debate, their first debate. There's a long history of incumbent presidents not doing well in their first debate. A lot of that has to do with style. A lot of that has to do with strategy, how they went about it. And sometimes it can be about substance and them, how they made their points. This is not what this debate was about at all. I have no idea what substance was about in this debate. No. Style was not an issue. How he answered, how he chose to attack, and the strategy. It wasn't that. This was strictly about us all watching a guy who seemed to struggle putting his thoughts together, and at times being incoherent. You're really not understanding what he's saying. So this debate, we are not debating at all about who won on style or substance. We have to talk about President Biden, and we will be talking about President Biden. Do you see any way that he's had an off night? Is there any chance of that? And I want to hold off, and maybe there's something else going on.
It's a hard thing. To see what somebody was even 4 years ago and then to see where they are now. But I think the thing we all have to think about is where he will be 4 years from now and what he would be like during those 4 years. And those are all real, valid concerns. And, just as much as we have an age requirement, presidents to run for president, you have to be 35, correct? Mm-hmm. That is the age requirement. I think this will beg the question whether or not there should be an age requirement or an age limitation. My father will point out he was forced in his industry to retire at 65 for maybe it's a lot of financial reasons, but for many reasons. And so if you can have an age requirement, can you not have an age limitation? And this might be one of these moments where we have to think about that as a country, because this is about, this is above politics. This is about so much more than that. And, whatever you think about where each candidate stands, competency has to be something that we can talk about and not make it look as though it's political. But competency is, that has to be one of the stipulations of being president.
But competency and cognitive ability aren't necessarily always directly tied to somebody's age. And I know you'll agree with this because we have talked to some really impressive, very recently, 70 plus, late 70s, 80-year-old folks who are as sharp as anything you will ever see.
We even talked about whether you like him or don't. We were just actually making this comparison because we were watching Dr. Anthony Fauci talking about stepping aside. How old is he? 84,
he told me 82,
I believe.
83, so something like that. I didn't realize.
He is older. So yes, I don't think you can put a necessary number on any of this, just as we can't determine whether or not somebody can drive at a certain age. But it is, and there has to be some measure, I would argue, of mental cognitive ability in order to do something as significant. I would just say, if lives are on the line, whether you're a physician or is someone who has lives in your hands based on decisions you can make that only you can make. I think that it is only fair. There is some sort of, I don't know, cognitive test or some sort of measure that we can put into place when you have positions that are of this significance. And what we saw tonight, I believe, makes many people question whether or not Joe Biden would be able to pass those sorts of tests.
I guess we have to wait and see. I mean, you know how I am. I'll like give it a beat. Let me see. Right? Let me see. And I think they have come out since that he had a cold. Not to say that I don't know what that.
But I think that makes it worse when the White House comes out after they see his performance and say he had a cold, because yes, his voice was raspy. That was the least of my concerns. Yes, fine. If he had a cold, I'm fine with that. That was not what made me nervous or made me concerned watching tonight.
What does any American who watched that tonight and waking up the next morning, these discussions taking place, how are we supposed to feel when you didn't maybe feel great about your choices before?
Right.
How are you supposed to feel about them? Because there's going to be so much on TV and the politics and the ins and outs and the convention and who's going to step in. There's going to be jockeying. All that's politics. But how am I supposed to feel about the leadership of this country and where we are and the choices that I already maybe didn't like?
It's concerning. And here's something that you and I can speak to directly. So we watched, obviously we watched the debate, but we watched the coverage after the debate. And I think you and I know in a way that we can speak very confidently about. When you see broadcasters defending or at least trying to massage something that's obvious to everyone who watched, that's concerning to me. I would appreciate in these moments for people who are journalists, whatever network you work for, to be honest about what you witnessed and then to have a real conversation, because that is our job. That is our role as journalists, to seek the truth, right? Or at least to point out the obvious and not to say, oh, well, look back in history and every incumbent president who goes on to their first debate falters slightly. That is not, as you pointed out, what we're talking about, what we saw tonight. So let's all just be honest. And I think I would appreciate that from people whose job it is to call and put our politicians in the spotlight to say, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is what we want to have answers about. And to really just look at it from the perspective of what is best for the voters to have a clear, honest answers about what we're dealing with and who we're voting for. I think it just, in the way we cover politics and how we cover politics, unfortunately, doesn't give many voters that clear, honest, true questions, like where you're actually asking, what did we see?
Look, this is a rarity, right? We've been jumping around watching everybody's coverage afterwards, but this is a rarity after a debate that, to your point, we have seen that, and not a lot of it, and not a lot of defense of President Biden's performance. But this is a rare occasion where every Democrat and every Republican on a set seem to be agreeing about what we all saw. And there's not a lot of Democrats. There's just no denying. So it's rare to see that kind of agreement on both sides about the performance of one candidate. Everybody saw the same thing tonight. And it's remarkable, Robes. You remember the guy he's on the stage with just a few weeks ago was found guilty of 34 felonies.
I know. And so that wasn't really even
a non-issue.
It was a non-issue.
A convicted felon is debating President Biden, but we're afterwards talking about President Biden's performance and what he did tonight on stage. That is remarkable.
It really was. And you know what? we did have this, I mean, it seems weird to even call it a watch party now, but to have the younger, we had several young women, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 young women with us.
This is our life now. It's just me
right?
and a whole house full of
from 21 to 11.
Yeah.
But it was quiet because I think everyone was not only shocked by what they were seeing, but didn't really even know what to say. It wasn't this spirited debate where you're like, I can't believe he said that. I disagree with this. Or there was some sort of any conversation about the topics or the issues. That was all lost in what we were witnessing. And I think I just feel sad. And I'm really curious to see what the next steps are. Like, do Democrats and does the Biden administration actually fully admit what's happening, what we saw, that it wasn't just a bad night? Because this isn't the first time, obviously, that we've seen signs that perhaps Joe Biden isn't the person who can handle the next 4 years in office physically, mentally.
86. He'd be 86. I mean, I don't know how many 80 plus year olds. No, I don't. Excuse me. I am not going to get into his age. Let's actually not do that at all. It's we don't want to just put it on there. Oh, 80 year olds in your life. No. That's not what we're talking about at all. And to your point, the White House, in the past few weeks, came out and called these fake videos and what were they saying? Deep fakes and all these things.
Fakes.
Where they say, it was edited a certain way and this and that. But the videos spoke for themselves, where President Obama had to kind of guide President Biden off a stage somewhere. He seemed to be looking off in the distance. I know they said that one was altered when the parachute guys were coming down and all that. And then him at the concert at the White House as well, where he didn't seem to be moving to the music and seemed to be stuck. All those things are just...
And clearly tonight, even in the cutaways, just there was a vacant, absent look to his face that was undeniable, that wasn't edited, that wasn't manufactured in any way. And I think, anyone who watched that debate tonight, it would be hard to have seen what we all saw and come to any other conclusion.
So, but if we suspend some judgment in some way, and you wait and hear from him, or wait for the next debate, that's months away. But now the talk is there's no way that debate is taking place. No way. So I don't know what to wait for. Do we replacing him, and then this new set of chaos and new jockeying, and we got to go through more cable news debate and fighting and arguing, and this was a tough night.
If you took the politics out of it, I think so many, I think about my mom, and I think about my dad even, who've recently lost their parents, and they're young and had older parents, but the debates that so many Americans go through who have moms and dads who are aging, at what point do you say, Mom, Dad, we have to make this decision for you? And it's a hard thing to do, but I feel like that's almost what's happening right now in the country. Looking at Joe Biden, so many people can look to their own families and say, wow, I had to make the same decision, but it wasn't a matter of national security. It wasn't a matter of presidential politics. This was about my parents' personal safety, or the safety of other people if they were to get behind the wheel. I mean, this is, to me, wow, one of those issues. That's what I saw tonight.
To what you just said, just made a light bulb go off for me, in that he didn't just have a bad night tonight, meaning this didn't just happen to him this evening.
No.
It means yesterday and the day before, people that are around him are seeing and witnessing him, and they put him out there tonight.
Yeah.
So I to what you're saying, that you're seeing a decline, like we are just seeing this this wasn't just sprung on us this evening, and it wasn't just sprung on the country. It wasn't just sprung on the administration. If in fact this is where he is, and we saw who Joe Biden is on a daily 24/7 basis, if that's who he is, then who's behind
responsible?
the scenes and responsible? To your point, you have to speak to your grandparent or whatever sometimes and say, hey, we have to make this decision for you.
I don't know. And then I think about who's responsible, who would be responsible for speaking up, number one. And number two, what message does that send to the world? It is, to me, this was a very sad night, a very sobering night, and a night that I think is going to require our government and the people who, we choose to elect. We need to really think about what we want to require of them in terms of transparency and national security, and do we need to make changes in who we elect and what the rules are around that? Do we need to make some amendments? Do we need to acknowledge that we have to make hard decisions and have hard conversations that people have to make privately in their own families? But now I think we're facing that as a country.
Well, maybe that's and again, I'm only seeing him. We're only seeing him, Robes, from a distance through that TV screen, and seeing what seemed like an off night and a bad night. And maybe the people who see him every day will look at that and say, like, that is not Joe Biden. He had a rough night for whatever reason. He's going to come back and be strong. Maybe that'll be the case, and I hope it is. But it was difficult to watch. But however we go about, like you said, the conversations we might need to have, just please, y'all, be kind. I mean, just be kind to each other, no matter where you are on politics. You might agree with this guy on nothing, but he's a human being. I mean, and he's got a family, and everybody's going through something. He's just going through it in front of the world.
I feel like this was a moment where I hope maybe we can all, at this point, transcend politics and really talk about things in a real, honest, authentic way. And if we all really do want what's best for our country, we have those honest conversations. And that's what I hope can come out of tonight, because I just don't think there was any other way to look at it. This didn't feel political. This didn't feel ideological. This didn't feel topical. This didn't feel, I don't even know that I got anything out of tonight in terms of where folks stand on things, or where I felt about them from where you stand on things. It was really just about something incredibly sad, and something I felt actually angered about as an American that I didn't know more about before tonight, because it was undeniable. It was not edited, and we have to, as a country, I think, address it.
Well, folks, we just wanted to hop on tonight after the debate and chime in about what we saw. And please, as a reminder, as you go about your discussions, which we know you will, about this, and everybody will be talking about it for the next several days. But just, be mindful, be kind.